School bus driver slips something inside a kid's bag, which ends up changing her life drastically. Many people believe that teenagers are quite rude and arrogant, but this is not true in every case. Some of the teenagers had to go through a lot during their childhood, and it is the circumstances that make a person what they portray themselves to the real world. Cindy was one of those kids who was a victim of the situation. Cindy, unlike any other teenage kid, carried the baggage of her past and kept on dragging that with the present time. She had to face hardships from the very beginning. As a kid, she was abandoned by Sally, her mother, and never got to feel what motherly affection is. When she came into senses with her growing age, she realized that the only place she was being accepted was an orphanage. Cindy did nothing but wandered house to house under the supervision of foster parents who kept on changing every time she switched home. All she knew was that she belonged nowhere, and this made her question her own existence. This was something serious that was discovered by no one. Since Cindy was shifted home to home precisely 8 times before, she lost her ability to get attached to people. She considered herself lonely and cursed herself for being an orphan. She always wanted a family to live with, although she was given families, but as she started developing attachment, she was then shifted somewhere other, which made her feel worthless. The little girl was going to meet her new foster parents, which was supposedly her 9th house in the span of her 12 years. She had no excitement left in her, and like a dead leaf, she was going along with the wind. Cindy was a rebellious kid when she saw something inequitable being served to anyone. But for herself, she never took a stand. Cindy was known for her rebellious nature. She didn't want to get rejected, hence she agreed on this as well. When Cindy entered the house, she saw that the house has already accepted her. She was puzzled as she never got to meet the owners of the house, yet they displayed a warm gesture of acceptance. Cindy was not sure how to react to the situation, so she decided not to be a troublemaker anymore for anyone. For the very first time, she realized that she is really something. While she was exploring the house, she heard a voice calling her name. The voice she heard was somewhat familiar to her ears. Nevertheless, she tried not to think much and behave properly so that she could not get rejected by her 9th foster parents. The moment the lady stepped in front of Cindy, her memory triggered and she realized this older woman was no stranger. She felt a strange connection with the lady. The lady embraced Cindy and could not stop the tears running down her cheeks. She tried to console her by saying, "It's okay, Grandma." That was not the very first time she was meeting her grandmother. The time she was in the orphanage, she was constantly told that one day, her grandmother would come to take her back. She came to take her before, but her grandmother could not find her as she was being parented somewhere. On being asked about how the old lady found her grandchild, she replied that she had never given up hope in the situation. She used to constantly check social services and was lucky enough to finally locate her location. Now that she had traced everything, grandmother prepared herself for loving and caring for her only grandchild. Cindy's grandmother thought of providing all the amenities she deserved. The first thing she did was to enroll Cindy at school. To her dismay, Cindy struggled a lot in school as she had no motivation to study. With her continuous poor performance at school, she was dragged out of the school and introduced to homeschool by her grandmother. She finally was able to catch up and was sent back to school. As time passed, Grandma became weak and started suffering from many diseases. She was medicated and was under the supervision of doctors. Then also, she did not stop encouraging Cindy. She taught her honesty and appreciation, which Cindy would learn wholeheartedly. Day by day, the grandmother's condition worsened. She could barely eat, drink, or breathe. During her final days, Cindy's grandmother could not bear more and she passed away. Cindy, again, was left all alone in this world. She again experienced love and attachment for a short period. Every time she came back home from her school, she could not see her grandmother, which made her feel aloof. The giggling and chirpy home turned to a silence house with lots of memories carved inside the walls. All Cindy did was to cry and blame herself for not being a good kid. One day, while crying, she heard her grandma's voice inside her head. She recalled how her grandmother used to say the show must go on every time she was about to give up. Cindy thought that her grandmother gifted her the identity and she was the only reason why Cindy was able to stand tall amongst the crowd. She decided that she would be making her happy in turn. To make her grandmother proud, Cindy decided to begin training to become a bus driver after high school. The school was the only refuge for her in those final years and had assisted her to become the woman she was. She wanted to get associated with the school in any possible way, so she took up the training. No matter how negative situations shaped Cindy's past, she could overcome all the memories by watching children laugh and giggle when she drove to and from school. She was a keen observer, and one day she noticed two particular students encouraging a lonely student named Jackson on the bus. Cindy was utterly mesmerized witnessing this kindness. She thought about how right their upbringing was. She wanted to meet their parents, but due to lack of time and contact, she could not. She decided to do something which would make Cindy's voice heard to them. To appreciate the kids, Cindy decided that she would write a letter to the parents appreciating the kids and thanking the parents for inculcating kindness inside kids. Though she was sure she won't be getting any response, then also she chose to write to them. Cindy started the letter by writing, "I am compelled to write to tell you how beautiful your children are, inside and out. This can only come from the home, your patience and guidance, the examples that you set and teach." She continued, "I have a child on my bus named Jackson. Both of your children have shown him compassion and support. Every day your children ask if they can sit with Jackson." Cindy added, "Sometimes Jackson is a little sad getting on the bus, but as soon as he sees Annalise and Jorge, he smiles. Jackson has difficulties walking and it takes a bit for him to get to his seat. Today Annalise looked out from around her and said, 'Come on, Jackson, you can do it.'" Cindy continued her letter by stating, "And when we arrived at school, Jorge took it upon himself to carry his backpack. I know you know how wonderful your children are, but I wanted you to know that it shows." With this, she closed her letter. Cindy cleverly placed the letter inside the bag of one of the kids. Unaware of the consequences, she said goodbye to the kids and continued driving the bus. Cindy was satisfied with what she did. She did not hope for any response. Her intention was very pious, that was, making the parents aware of their kids. While checking the homework notebooks, Mother of the Kind kids caught hold of the letter that Cindy wrote. She read it over and over again. She decided that she would take some action regarding it. The action she opted for did good to her, and finally, she got to understand what her kids do out of the house. The mother had no option other than replying to Cindy, who was actually a bus driver. Instead of having one-on-one conversation, she opted for another method. She took up social media as a platform to reply to the gesture Cindy showed back then. She shared the letter and the story on social media. Little did she know people would react to it in a very positive way. The post she shared got a good amount of likes and shares. The story went viral and was known by everyone using the platform. The mother was overwhelmed by seeing such a positive response from people. The admiration she received from mass encouraged her to teach her kids even more humanity. With this, she wanted to know the story of Cindy as well because she thought she somehow connected with her. The mother wanted to meet Cindy, but because of the busy schedule, Cindy could not promise anything to her. Cindy too wanted to meet the lady because she was already moved by her upbringing. She wanted to learn many things from her, but she was bound by the situation. The mother of the kids was desperate for meeting Cindy, so she devised a plan to make Cindy agree for the lunch. She asked Cindy to drop her kids in the last and accompany her kids home. This way, she could get enough time to prepare a ravishing lunch as well. Everything went as planned. Cindy finally was at the kids' place. While serving lunch, randomly the mother of two asked about Cindy's hometown, and Cindy chose to be quiet. The mother analyzed that Cindy was feeling a bit uncomfortable, so she stopped asking questions and with a smile served her the lunch. While having her lunch, Cindy looked here and there so that she could get any random topic to start. They both were dealing with an awkward silence. In that process of rolling her eyes, she caught hold of a photograph placed on the table. Cindy had no connection with the lady, then also, she thought she had seen her somewhere. To clear her mind, she thought she had been meeting people since childhood, and it might be possible that a lady similar to that of the mother crossed her path at a point of time, hence her mind connected with the lady. It was only when Cindy's eyes got stuck on a photograph kept on the table, the mother began asking if Cindy knew her. Cindy could hardly hear what the mother was saying, and she gave up all her attention on recalling her past and the relationship she shared with the lady. Cindy recalled her childhood days when she was there in the orphanage. She remembered she had a friend named Emma. They used to play together and were best friends until the time Emma was taken up by a family. On this note, Cindy accumulated all her strength to ask the name of the lady. "Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Emma," uttered the lady sitting beside. Cindy's eyes widened and all she could say was, "I remember you." On asking how she remembered her, Cindy sang a song which they used to sing together back then. Emma was all dumbstruck. She hugged Cindy tightly. Cindy disclosed all the hardships she went through. She did not cry at all while telling this because she was over them. Emma could never imagine in what state of mind Cindy was. She stopped Cindy in between and promised her that she won't be facing any kind of hardship anymore. Cindy never had imagined what her life brought for her. She crossed the path with childhood best friend after 3 or more decades. She believed it was all scripted by the God, and their ways were meant to be together. Cindy was glad that she finally got to meet a family for life. Unlike in the past, she was not afraid of getting attached to people. Since that meeting, Cindy's life completely changed. She had a family to look after, kids to take care of, and a sister to share secrets with. The thundering clouds in her life got away by the sunny days. She loved her newly introduced family, and in turn, she was being loved as well. Her life took a positive curve, just like the curve of her lips, that is, her smile.